Well, Scouts, we're back out around the fire pit. And today we're going to use a 10-inch Dutch oven, and we're going to make a fall time favorite called apple crisp. And it may seem a little intimidating thinking about preparing something that involves a lot of ingredients or some ingredients from scratch and preparing your own apples. But I need to assure you that the effort is well worth the dish that you will end up afterwards. We're going to start off with around 7 or 8. We've got about 9 different apples here. We'll start off with those. Depending on what's in season, what's cooked in your area, get a good baking apple. The apples are going to be coated in both granular sugar and some cinnamon. Then for the topping, we're going to use some oatmeal, quick oats. They'll work out great. We're going to use some flour, and we're going to use some brown sugar, and then about a half a stick of butter to be able to go into this. So what we'll do right now is we'll get started making up our crisp topping that we'll put aside for a moment, and then we'll come back to it. So let me clean up my table here and we'll be ready to go. So for this part of the process, we are going to use a Ziploc bag. This is a gallon bag that is of good quality so that it won't break apart, because we're going to mix the butter in this in a second. So let's start by doing our dry ingredients. With the bag open, I'll peel back the top a little bit, open it up, and we're going to start off with 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. Now, I washed my hands before doing this because I need to press down the brown sugar, because brown sugar, when it comes out of the packet, has a lot of air space in it, so I want to make sure I get equal. So I've got 3/4 of a cup of packed brown sugar. Put that in the bottom of our bag. Then I will take and pour out an equal part, or 3/4 cups, of the quick oats. Three-quarter cups of the quick oats. Put that right in. So I have 3/4 cups of flour. And with our flour in, we'll close up our bag. Just going to mix these ingredients. You may find that the brown sugar has clumped. Just use your fingers and break it up a little bit so it separates and gets equally spread out amongst the other ingredients. So with that, my dry ingredients are mixed thoroughly. Now what I will do is I'll take our stick of butter, and on the paper, just going to take it. I want to cut this up into quarters. So my goal here is to take, I'll cut that way. That's working a little easier. You could melt this, but that's one more pot we have to worry about. So my goal here is to cut it up into smaller pieces. And I'm going to add this right into our dry ingredients. And with our butter added to our dry ingredients, now I'm going to just try to coat those lightly, just so that they separate in the bag. And remove some of the air from the bag. Now my goal is to just work the butter into the other dry ingredients. This is a step that you could do at home and have this all prepared ahead of time, so you're not out in the woods with bags of the other ingredients. You could just do this at home in the Ziploc bag. Sometimes you can use a fork or a pastry blender, which is a device that's used to cut in or mix in butter and other ingredients, like Crisco or whatever, into different dry ingredients. So now I have my crisp topping all prepared and ready to go on top of these apples, and I'll set this aside and we'll get to preparing the apples. So before we get started peeling our apples, we're going to need to coat them in some cinnamon as well as some granulated sugar. Probably the easiest way to do that when you're camping is in a Ziploc bag. So I'm going to add approximately a half a cup of sugar. Not an exact science. About a half a cup. And a generous, probably about a teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm going to just incorporate those two together. So now with our cinnamon and sugar ready, we're going to start preparing the apples. And we'll keep this bag open, put it in here for now, for lack of a better place. And I'm going to cheat today. And I'm going to use this nice little gadget here, which is made for peeling and coring apples. So you line up the core so it lines up with the opening, and before you know it, you have an apple that just falls apart and is ready for your apple crisp. So every couple apples, I'm just going to break apart the apples in the bag from one another and then get them coated in the cinnamon and the sugar. So I made quick work of about 8 apples. They're inside of our Dutch oven. They are looking good. Stirred them around a little bit to make sure they were evenly coated in cinnamon and sugar. Now what I'll do is I'll clean up, we'll add our topping, and we'll get ready to put it on some coals. Now I'm going to take and coat the top with our crisp mixture. Try to make it as even as I can. Take a spoon and help even out. You want it to sit on top of the apples. Okay. With our apple crisp topping spread out on top of the apples, we'll get this on some coals. And you'll notice that the Dutch oven has this liner in it. And this liner, what it enables me to do today, is to be able to have this dish to eat later on during the day. Our family will be eating this after dinner, and it's earlier during the day when I'm filming. So if I left the wet ingredients in the Dutch oven, I'd be worried about it causing a problem with the cast iron and maybe sitting there a little bit too long. Or also, if we don't eat it all tonight, I'll be able to put this foil container in the refrigerator and we'll be able to enjoy it tomorrow. So I just want to show you a quick trick. When you're using a liner, it fits right down into the Dutch oven. And this Dutch oven has not been preheated. I'm going to put the lid on, make sure it sits tight. And now I'm going around the outside edge, and there's a rim that is on the foil that I want to take and wrap the rim down around the edge of the pot. What I don't want to have happen is that I run into a problem with ash collecting there. I want to make sure my bale continues to work. I've successfully put in my Dutch oven liner inside the pot, and we'll be ready to cook. I've got some good hardwood coals going here, and I'm going to take and get some and just make a nice little bed of coals. Take my glove off so I can get a sense of how much heat I have. I don't want too much heat because I'll burn the bottom. Now I will get some heat on my top. My glove off. I can get a feel for the amount of heat I have on there. Always add more. So with the right quantity of heat above and below my Dutch oven, we'll sit back, let it cook. Periodically we'll come over, we'll give it a little spin. One direction on the lid, the other on the base. Just make sure we have good even heating temperatures throughout the baking process. And before you know it, there's going to be a delicious apple crisp inside this Dutch oven. It's important that I make sure I have enough coals for later on in the baking process. So keeping my fire stoked with firewood that's small enough in size that it'll produce coals relatively quickly is important to your baking process. Well, Scouts, we're at about 40 minutes, and I could tell from the aroma coming off of our Dutch oven that this apple crisp is going to be delicious. A couple times I needed to add a little bit of heat on the top there to keep it going. These coals don't last quite as long as the charcoal coals do, but we have plenty of coals next to us there as we kept the fire going. For the last 10 minutes or so, I just scraped away the coals from the bottom because I was just trying to crisp up the top a little bit more. So let's take a look and see what this looks like. That looks delicious. Our pot came out delicious. That apple is cooked through. The crisp is living up to its name, nice and crisp on the top. That butter is just worked in there with the oats and the brown sugar and the flour. And I just wish you could be here to share this with me. But hopefully you'll get out around the campfire. Try this yourself. Don't be intimidated by peeling the apples. When you have a patrol of Scouts, you can make quick work of that. And enjoy cooking around the campfire with coals that are right there with your Dutch oven. See if you have available to you, if you have a smaller patrol, a 10-inch Dutch oven. It may be the right size for dessert, but certainly you could use a 12-inch with a pan inside of it up on a trivet. Get out there, have fun with your troop and your fellow Scouts. Consider different cooking methods and different recipes, and have a great time in the outdoors.